Hi, my name is Gurmeet Manku. In this video, I'm sharing with you how do I minimize my dietary cholesterol intake and what is my motivation? Why do I do it? First of all, quick summary. I didn't know this. I learned this like 4 years ago. Dietary cholesterol is found exclusively in animal products, and plant foods have zero dietary cholesterol, none at all. Okay. So you might wonder, if somebody wants to minimize dietary cholesterol, then they have to eat only plants, right? And yes, it's possible to construct a nutritionally complete food plate by adopting ACLM guidelines. ACLM is American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and look at the food plate, it's full of plants. Okay. Now this is a institution which is carved out within mainstream medicine. It's a specialization within mainstream medicine in USA. Okay. So why do I do this? So why do I want to minimize my dietary cholesterol? Let's walk through a series of guidelines and institutions. Like, what do they say? Let's go through USDA, US Department of Agriculture. They come up with guidelines every 5 years. 2020 guidelines, they said the National Academies recommends that trans fat and dietary cholesterol consumption to be as low as possible. Okay. And then they mention, cholesterol and a small amount of trans fat occur naturally in some animal source foods. Okay. Now they're saying National Academies recommends. So who recommends? Okay. It used to be called Institute of Medicine. Then there's a name change. It became National Academy of Medicine. And by the way, there are 3 of them: National Academy of Science, National Academy of Engineering, National Academy of Medicine. Very prestigious organizations. Okay. If you study who they are, like what do they do, very prestigious. Now, Institute of Medicine, way back in 2006, has this encyclopedic report on all micronutrient information. Okay. 1,330 pages long. Somewhere on page 70, they have this table. They say dietary cholesterol, trans fats, sat fats, as low as possible, as low as possible, as low as possible. Okay. Now, why do they say that? Page 75. Now, this is of personal interest to me. I'll share with you in a moment why. So let's read it. They say, a substantial body of evidence suggests that sat fats, trans fats, and cholesterol, dietary cholesterol, raise blood, total and LDL cholesterol levels, which in turn increases risk for CHD. CHD is coronary heart disease. The condition due to which we can fall dead due to heart attacks, which is atherosclerosis centric, clogging of the arteries and hardening of the arteries, that one. Okay. Now, the reason I am so keen to reduce this risk is because I'm from India. India has an extraordinarily high rate of heart disease. I'll show you some numbers in a moment. And I am originally from India, now staying in USA. Such people have a lot of heart disease. I'll show you some statistics in a moment. And that is why I'm reading this entire passage slowly and carefully, so that my friends might come in touch with this knowledge that, IOM says this. So let's read further. It says, because there is a positive linear trend between intake of each of these fats and the risk of coronary heart disease. Now see what they say. Even very low intakes of each may increase risk. They say it is thus recommended that intakes of sat fats, trans fats, and cholesterol remain as low as possible. Okay, they're very clearly saying what to do. Okay, so this is my motivation, one of the motivations why I really want my intake of all 3 minimized. This video is focusing on the dietary cholesterol part, and let's look at heart disease in India. Okay. Now, this is almost 28 years of data, 1990 till 2017. There are these red-colored deaths happening in India. These are communicable maternal neonatal nutritional diseases. Now, most of my friends don't face these conditions. Now, who are my friends? My personal life journey has been, I was lucky to be born in Delhi. My parents were in education, like a professor and a teacher. So I did well in academics. I was lucky I went to IIT Delhi. I came to UC Berkeley in USA for a master's, then I did a PhD at Stanford. Then I was lucky employed in Google, 18.5 years. So, my circle of friends became people like that. Engineering, or in Silicon Valley, in places like Google, Facebook, Twitter, Uber kind of places, and their spouses and their parents, their siblings, and their kids now. So, in such people living in urban places and working in such places, we people do not face these conditions most of the time. It's kind of rare. Most of us are facing these conditions. What are these conditions? NCDs, okay? Non-communicable diseases. What is non-communicable disease? So let's say I have a condition like heart disease or diabetes. That's one of the NCDs. You sit next to me. We have lunch or dinner. My disease, like heart disease and diabetes, will not get transmitted to you. Okay, that's the idea. NCDs. Now look at the deaths. Okay, the percentage of deaths due to NCDs is just climbing up, So these are the deaths which my friends and my family, me, people like us face. And at the very bottom, a few percentage are suicides, accidents, those kind of deaths. But let's come back to NCDs. Half of NCDs are cardiovascular. And now these are deaths. The incidence, how many people got the diagnosis is even more. It's so common, cardiovascular disease. Okay. And I'm a Punjabi. I grew up in Delhi, but I speak Punjabi at home. So I said, let's look at Punjab. Look at this cardiovascular deaths, a very large percentage, right? Okay. So it's because of statistics like these, I'm highly motivated to really cut out my heart disease risk and heart attack risk. Okay. Do you see where the motivation comes from? Let's look at one more data point. So people like me are also called Asian Indians, Indian Americans. So people from India who have come to USA. Okay. So look at these death rates. Heart disease, 28% of deaths among women, 31% of deaths among men. Okay. Now, it's a very small population in USA, so very few studies focus on just, we are called Asian Indians or Indian Americans, but a few exist. I'm quoting a research paper here. Coronary artery disease rates, the one due to which we potentially can fall dead due to heart attacks, 3 times higher than US national average. Okay. Hospitalization, 4 times higher. Complications, 2 to 4 times higher. There is some risk model, 6.6 times higher. It's a more malignant disease among us. Things like how many arteries are clogged, the degree of clogging, the rate at which disease is progressing, the age at which these things are manifesting, almost 5-10 years earlier. Every statistic I have heard of is worse for this population. It's because of such adverse statistics, my motivation to really minimize my heart attack risk, heart disease risk is, I want to minimize it. In my family, among the 4 grandparents, my maternal grandfather had heart disease. Okay, so I know it exists in my family too. So I have strong motivation to avoid this. Okay. So dietary cholesterol minimization can also be motivated from one more angle, which is nice. Dietary Inflammatory Index. Okay, let's see what this is. So inflammation is a very broad word. And then there is some concept called chronic inflammation. Okay, what they mean by that is some part of my body, some tissues, some organ somewhere is inflamed for weeks and months and years and decades. That kind of inflammation is associated with increased risk for many, many other health conditions, including cancer. Okay, so basically, if I'm inflamed somewhere inside, I'm increasing my risk of cancer. Now, cancer and heart disease are the number 2 and number 1 reasons of death worldwide. Okay, cancer is also a big one. I want to minimize my cancer risk also. Okay, so this piece of work, Dietary Inflammatory Index, is an attempt to classify all foods into pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory. So they actually studied 1,943 research papers. It's a literature survey. And they studied the intake of different foods or classes of foods or groups of food. What is the impact on some inflammation markers like interleukin-6, IL-10, CRP kind of markers, and they said let's classify into pro and anti-inflammatory and make an attempt to assign a numeric score with them. But instead of all these details, I said, is there a short summary somewhere? Yes, luckily I found a video, Dr. James Hibbert, 3-minute video, and he summarizes what all did they learn. He said, if I'm eating a diet strongly anti-inflammatory, it's going to be plant-based, colorful, and aromatic. Simple, right? But let's go a little deeper, right? So luckily, I found a slide deck at AICR website, and the slide I showed you here is also from the same slide deck. So this slide in particular is pretty amazing. It's a succinct summary of this work. They discovered after studying 1,943 articles, research papers, that these foods or food constituents are anti-inflammatory. These ones are pro-inflammatory, and then they have some conclusion. So look, pro-inflammatory food constituents happen to be the same 3 things I was showing you earlier in the IOM publication. Do you remember? Dietary cholesterol, trans fats, sat fats. The same 3 things show up here also. Interesting coincidence, right? So, and if you look at what this stuff is, these foods or food constituents are basically plants. Go through the list. Vegetables, fruits, whole grains, spices, seasoning, and fiber. Fiber, dietary fiber, is found only in plants. Animal foods have 0 dietary fiber. It's like a 0-1 kind of a thing, okay? Very clear dichotomy. So this is another motivation. I have to really cut down on my dietary cholesterol intake. So this is coming from chronic inflammation angle, right? So these are the two reasons, two motivations I have. At a very high level, you could say heart disease and cancer motivation, or heart disease is kind of a proxy for many metabolic conditions. You know, what helps for heart disease helps for many, many conditions. And then there is the cancer and inflammatory conditions. So kind of, that's a general guideline I have come to understand. I should really minimize all three. Okay. Now the video focuses on dietary cholesterol. So dietary cholesterol can be minimized by this decision that I choose to take, which is no animal products at all, plant foods only, because they have no dietary cholesterol. Okay, and I'll cover these in two separate videos: the trans fats, where do they come from, how do I handle them, and sat fats. This is the more complex story. Okay, so what do I eat? You might be surprised. If I don't eat animal food at all, what do? Here is a ACLM food plate, American College of Lifestyle Medicine. They advocate a whole food, plant-based food plate. And ACLM is actually not one or two doctors or some alternative medicine or some fringe medicine. It is mainstream medicine. Okay, just like we get a license to practice cardiology or rheumatology or endocrinology, we can get a license to practice lifestyle medicine today. Okay, it is like that. It's something within mainstream medicine in USA. Okay, so in my mind, I have conceptualized this food plate as having two sections, like right half, the left half. The right half is calorie-dense plant foods, which means whole grains, beans, some people call them beans, peas, legumes, or pulses, or beans, peas, lentils. In brief, we can call them beans in USA. A few nuts and seeds come in, some herbs and spices, berries and citrus. You put this together and it's really nice. And in North India, we call it dal chawal. Okay. Now, dal is beans, and sometimes we can pick one bean, sometimes a collection of beans, a composite like dal panchavati. Okay. Chawal literally means rice, but what I mean is any whole grain. Okay. There are so many millets in India. There are many choices. And sometimes creative people can mix a bunch of grains together and the combination works really well. And there are some recipes online. Okay. So this is basically whole grains, one or more, beans, one or more, judiciously, for taste purposes, put together in a tasty combination. Okay. Left hand side is a big salad. Okay. Made of a rainbow collection of fruits and vegetables and berries, and we can make it really tasty with citrus, lime, lemon, vinegar, herbs and spices. We can also introduce a little bit of seeds, okay, and berries. Some can be cooked, these constituents. Some of them can be raw. You can steam them, bake them. There are many ways of doing it, and just mix and match and put it all together. I'll show you in other videos how I do this. So this is the big picture as I see it. Okay, now I eat plants in their whole form. No meat, no fish, no eggs. There is no dairy in the food system. No milk, no ghee. There is no yogurt also. Okay, none at all. And there is no oil also. That's a nuanced guideline. No sugar. Dates are okay, and I have dates. Low or no salt. Okay, so I'll skip all these details. My goal was to just give a big picture idea of how to construct such a food plate. I'll go into details in other videos. Plus, I follow a low-fat guideline, and I'll cover that in some other video as to why I do a low-fat guideline. I'm motivated by multiple lines of evidence. And just to assure my friends and my family, it's not unusual to have such low fat. Like 10% fat is not unusual. These famous studies on the Okinawan diet, who are known for longevity, like lifespan and health span, both. They used to have a 6% fat diet, and the whole of Japan had 8%. And there were many other regions in the world, populations who used to follow kind of a 10-12% fat, even lower, in that range. Okay. So that's how I minimize my dietary cholesterol. I hope it was informative. So I'm writing articles at Thankful to Plants. And if you like these videos, please like, subscribe, and share with them. Thank you so much.